Silent Glen, October 1994, 11:47 p.m. The trees were whispering again. Cameron Hensley didn't believe in local legends, especially not the one about the monster of the fog. What a joke. A tall tale to scare tourists and keep bored teens from venturing too deep into the woods. That's what he thought, anyway. That's what he repeated to himself now, gripping his bulky camcorder like it might somehow protect him. The air was thick, still, not a single chirp or rustle, only the sound of gravel crunching beneath his boots as he followed the path past the no trespassing sign, deeper into the woods at the edge of town. The trail curved like a spine into the dark. A half moon hung low, its light murky behind a thickening haze. "Come on," he whispered, angling the lens. "If you're real, show yourself." The camcorder whirred. Static fuzzed around the corners of the frame. Something was interfering with the signal, but Cameron didn't notice. Not yet. The fog came fast. It was like it was alive, rising from the ground in long, hungry fingers that crept along the path, curling around tree trunks like veins. Cold, wet tendrils brushed against Cameron's ankles. He froze. A low giggle echoed through the trees. Not human, not sane. His breath caught. He spun, filming wildly. Nothing but fog, trees, and shadow. Then he smelled it. Rotting eggs, sulfur, burning hair. "Okay," he muttered, backing up. "Not funny, guys. I know someone's screwing with me." No answer, just the steady thump-thump of his pulse in his ears and that growing smell. Then, crack. A branch snapped to his left. He turned, and he saw it. A shape, massive, hulking, impossibly tall. 10 horns curled backward from its skull like twisted antlers. Its body looked stitched from fur and shadow, but what froze him solid were the eyes. 2 glowing embers, pulsing orange-red in the mist. The fog rushed forward like a living thing. Cameron dropped the camcorder. He turned to run, but his scream was cut short. His legs stopped moving, his arms too. He looked down and watched in horror as his skin started to shimmer, then dissolve, like smoke in reverse. His fingers, his elbows, his chest, vanishing into the fog in chunks. His body was evaporating, and somewhere in the trees, the giggling grew louder. Then, silence. The camcorder's red light blinked once, twice, recording. Only the forest remained, shrouded in fog, swallowing all evidence of Cameron Hensley, except for the tape. Still warm. Still spinning. The fog hadn't even arrived yet, and still, Ryder felt something watching him. His tires crackled over broken gravel as his old Ford creaked into the edge of town, headlights slicing through mist-streaked dusk. Silent Glen wasn't on most maps. It wasn't on any GPS either. To get there, you had to know. And Ryder knew, because someone had mailed him a VHS tape with a sticky note that simply read, "They're evaporating." He didn't laugh. He didn't even blink, because Ryder Morrow was a journalist for The Weird. He'd written pieces on Appalachian cryptids, spontaneous combustions, and entire towns swallowed by sinkholes. But none of it ever felt like this. None of it ever felt personal. The air shifted as he passed the crooked wooden sign. "Welcome to Silent Glen, population, literally." 3 question marks were painted over the original number, faded and scratched. He slowed as an old man in a rocking chair on a porch turned to stare directly at him, expression unreadable, unmoving. The sun dipped. The town seemed to hold its breath. Every building looked like it had been abandoned and then reluctantly re-inhabited, wood warped with water stains, streetlights that never turned on, a gas station without pumps. The fog hadn't arrived yet, but Ryder could smell it, distant, faint, acrid. like something had been burned and buried. He parked in front of the Lurkwood Inn, the only lodging option in town, a decaying 2-story structure with flickering neon signage that read ROMS. The O buzzed in and out like it was choking. Inside, the lobby was silent. Plastic plants drooped in yellowed pots. A ceiling fan spun lazily above an empty desk. Ryder rang the bell. No answer. He rang it again. A woman emerged from the shadows behind the desk like she'd been waiting in place for hours. Pale, tall. Her name tag read MAVIS. "You're here for the fog," she said flatly. Ryder blinked. "I'm here to ask questions." "You won't like the answers," she muttered, sliding a rusted key across the counter. Room 6. Ryder's room smelled faintly of mildew and something sharp, like iron or old blood. He set his bag down, pulled the VHS tape from his coat pocket, and loaded it into the battered player next to the TV. Static. Then, a figure running through the woods. Heavy breathing, fog rolling fast like a wave. And then the screen distorted, pixelated, and the figure vanished. Ryder leaned forward. He rewound, slowed it. The moment was impossible. The person had simply disappeared, not run, not cut away. Evaporated. He sat back in silence. The room suddenly felt too small. Outside, wind tickled the edges of the window pane. The clouds were sinking. The smell of sulfur crept in under the door like a warning. The fog was coming. The fog hadn't touched the town yet, but Ryder woke to the sound of scratching. Not loud, just faint enough to make you question if you heard it at all, like a nail gently dragging across the motel door, or a claw. By the time he flung the door open, the hallway was empty. Silent Glen didn't have a real downtown, just a few squat brick buildings pressed against each other like they were hiding from the woods. Ryder sipped a bitter cup of coffee from a diner that served as both town hall and bait shop. The waitress never made eye contact. Nobody did. Until she walked in. She didn't look like she belonged in Silent Glen. Long dark hair, tangled slightly from wind, olive skin, heavy black boots, a loose army jacket, and a satchel that looked older than she was. She slid into the booth across from him without asking. "You're not from here," she said. Ryder narrowed his eyes. "No, you are." She tilted her head. "You're here because of the disappearances." Guess the sign gave me away. He didn't smile. She didn't either. "My name's Elani," she said. "I know what you're looking for, and I know you won't find it without help." He hesitated. "And why would you help me?" A long pause. Finally she said, "Because no one else will. And if you stay long enough, you'll understand why." She glanced at the window. "When the fog starts coming, don't stand near it, not even a little." "You think the fog is killing people?" She looked back at him slowly, like she pitied the question. "I know it is." They walked together past the cracked library steps where weeds grew like veins through the concrete. Elani told him stories, carefully, like she was testing his reaction. People who vanished in broad daylight, doors that opened onto mist-filled rooms, a man who tried to light a cigarette as the fog rolled in and was never seen again, just a flickering ember left behind. "It plays with you," she whispered, "like it enjoys it." Ryder stopped. "You've seen it?" She didn't answer. Instead, she pointed to the forest line. Trees loomed like soldiers behind a veil of gray. That's where it lives. It watches, waits. That's what it does best. He studied her. And what do you know that no one else does? She turned slowly to face him. The wind caught her jacket. For just a moment, Ryder thought he saw something dark, burn marks maybe, along the skin of her throat. I know it's not just fog, she said. It's alive. That night, Ryder dreamt of vapor hissing under his motel door, of Elani standing outside in the fog, eyes glowing, whispering his name. He jolted awake at 3:03 a.m. A low hum filled the air, like something breathing through the walls. He reached for the light, but the room was already dimly lit, not from the lamp, from outside. The fog had arrived. It began with a smell, not strong, just off, like burnt matches soaked in sewer water. Ryder awoke before sunrise, the motel still cloaked in night. Something was scratching at the window, not violently, gently, like it was being polite or patient. He froze in bed, breath shallow. Then came the second sound. A laugh. Not a child's, not quite human either, somewhere in between, distant, muffled by thickness. He moved slowly toward the window and peeled back the curtain. Fog. Thick, rising, moving in slow swirls, like something exhaling across the parking lot. And in the center, barely visible, a tall shape, not moving, just watching. He blinked, and it was gone. By morning, the town was coated in gray. Fog clung to every inch of glass and wood like mold. People walked fast, heads down. Some locked their shops, others didn't open at all. Elani met him at the diner again. No coffee today, no servers, just her, silent at the window, watching the fog roll down the street. Don't go outside for long, she said without looking at him. It's thicker today. It's hungry. Before Ryder could respond, the bell over the door jingled and slammed open. A man burst in, face pale, eyes wild. Teddy's gone, he shouted. He just... The rest of the sentence never made it out, because in that moment, every window in the diner shattered inward. Fog poured inside like floodwater. People screamed. Ryder ducked. Elani grabbed him and yanked him under a table. Through the broken glass, they could barely see the shape of someone, a man running into the street covered in fog. He stumbled, screamed. His skin began melting away like paper touched by fire. Chunks of him peeled into mist. His scream became static. And then he was gone. Not a body, not a shadow. Just fog. And the faint smell of sulfur. The town called it a tragedy. Teddy Malloy, local mechanic, went missing after suffering a severe panic episode. No one would talk to Ryder except Elani. They sat together in an abandoned playground as dusk set in. Fog hovered at the tree line, watching. Ryder turned to her. How are you not scared? I am, she said softly. I've just lived with it longer. Do you think it'll stop? No, she whispered. It never stops. It waits, it plays, and it never forgets a name. She looked at him then, really looked. And now it knows yours. The fog wasn't supposed to be this thick. Ryder stood at the edge of the cracked motel balcony, staring out into the sea of white. The parking lot had disappeared. The street lamp buzzed above him, flickering weakly, like it knew it was about to die. He couldn't see the forest anymore, or the diner, or anything, really. just fog. It pressed up against the glass like it wanted inside. He backed away slowly and locked the door to room 6. Inside, Elani sat on the bed, clutching a half-burned journal they'd found tucked behind a false drawer in the motel desk. The pages were filled with frantic scrawlings, names, dates, sketches of a beast with curling horns and gaping jaws. The last entry read, "It whispered my name through the fog. My skin began to burn before I opened the door. I think it's inside now." Ryder stared at the page for a long time. Then he heard it. The faintest sound of something sliding across the floor. He looked up. The fog had crept under the door, silently, deliberately. A thin tendril of mist snaked toward the bed like a finger reaching through a cracked coffin. "Get up," he whispered. "Elani, get up." She looked down and froze. Her skin paled. The fog touched the bottom of her boot. The rubber sizzled like flesh meeting fire. She screamed. Ryder yanked her off the bed. The fog moved faster now. From the air vent. From beneath the dresser. From the cracks in the window. It wasn't just entering the room, it was invading. Something thudded against the door, heavy, slow, like knuckles the size of bricks dragging down the wood. Then they saw it. Through the thin, fogged glass. A silhouette. Massive, hulking, horns like branches twisting backward, its claws scraped across the glass, slow and deliberate. Behind it, 2 pulsing orange-red embers, not eyes, furnaces. The fog monster. It didn't knock, it waited. Ryder grabbed the rusted chair and hurled it through the motel window. Glass shattered, cold air rushed in, mixing with the fog already coiling through the room like veins. "Go!" he yelled. They leapt out onto the balcony. Elani nearly slipped. Ryder grabbed her arm, pulling her down the rusting fire escape. Behind them, something growled, low, like rock grinding against bone. They hit the pavement and sprinted. Ryder's breath burned in his throat. Elani's eyes watered from the sting in the air. The fog chased them, not just rolling, crawling, like it knew their path. Every turn, it met them. Every street, it closed in. The fog wanted them alone, apart. At the edge of the woods, they dove behind an old abandoned van and collapsed. They waited. The fog didn't follow, not yet. Ryder coughed hard, his chest aching. Elani stared at her hands. They were shaking. "Did you see it?" she whispered. He nodded. She didn't ask what it looked like. She already knew. And far off in the distance, barely audible beneath the breeze and the rustling leaves, came that sound again. A giggle. And then silence. Silent Glen was quieter the next day, not calm, hushed, like a place holding its breath, waiting for the scream. Ryder stood in the middle of Main Street as early morning fog licked at his ankles. No traffic, no footsteps, just boarded windows and locked doors. The gas station sign spun slowly in the breeze, creaking like a noose swaying from a tree limb. He and Elani had barely slept. They'd returned to the Lurkwood Inn at dawn to find room 6 sealed shut, windows fogged from the inside, door frame warped, and claw marks etched deep into the wood. Mavis, the desk clerk, refused to speak. She just stared past him with glassy eyes and slid a different room key across the counter. Room 12, the farthest from the office, no windows. Ryder walked into the town library, what was left of it. It smelled like mold and dust and something deeper, older, the kind of scent that lived in places people weren't meant to enter anymore. Faded newspapers lined a table. He skimmed the headlines. Local woman vanishes in morning fog. No trace left. Third child missing in 2 months. Search halted as fog rolls in again. There were dozens, some with handwritten notes in the margins, names scratched out, symbols etched into corners of the paper like protection spells. He wasn't alone. An old man sat in the far corner, eyes sunken, skin thin as paper. Ryder approached slowly. "Did you know them?" Ryder asked, holding up one of the articles. The old man didn't look up. "They asked too many questions," he rasped, "just like you." "Why won't anyone talk about it?" Ryder asked. "Why pretend it's not happening?" The man's eyes finally met his. "Because knowing gets you noticed, and when it notices you, it doesn't stop." He leaned closer. "Fog isn't just weather here, it's punishment." Ryder stared. "Punishment for what?" But the man turned away and never spoke again. Back at the motel, Elani was waiting. She sat on the floor, knees tucked to her chest, flipping through the burned journal again. Her eyes were distant, hollow. "I remembered something," she said softly. Ryder sat beside her. "What?" "When I was a kid, my mother took me into the woods during a fog. Everyone said to stay inside, but she said it only hunted those who were afraid." She paused. "She vanished 2 nights later, right outside our house. All I found was her scarf, soaked in mist, still warm." Ryder said nothing. "I think she offered herself. I think some people in this town, they knew that's how it worked. Sacrifices, blood for silence." "You think it's that simple?" Elani shook her head slowly. "No, I think it's worse." That night, the fog returned thicker than ever. It didn't crawl. It pulsed. Outside the motel, Ryder saw the outline of someone in the street, a woman. She was motionless, facing the motel. "Elani," he whispered, "look." But Elani was already at the window. Her expression changed, shifting from fear to recognition. "I know her," she breathed. "That's Mrs. Vance." The woman hadn't been seen in town in over a year. Elani opened the door and stepped into the hall. "Wait, what are you doing?" Ryder grabbed her arm. "She's not supposed to be here. She's not real." Elani turned back slowly. "That's what I'm afraid of." The next morning began with screaming. It echoed across Silent Glen in short, broken bursts, sharp as broken glass. Ryder shot up from the cot in room 12, heart pounding, the sound still caught in the corners of his mind. Outside, the fog hadn't lifted. If anything, it had settled. They reached Main Street just as the last screams died out. A crowd had formed, loose, jittery. People pressed together near the boarded-up bakery, hands to mouths, eyes wide and distant. Ryder pushed to the front. That's when he saw it. Or what was left of it. A single shoe, smoking, sitting in a growing puddle of dew where the fog had pooled unnaturally thick. Elani stood stone still beside him, her fingers curled into fists. "I saw him last night," she whispered. "Mr. Silas. He owned the bakery. He waved at me just before the fog reached him." No one moved, no one spoke. A man behind them muttered a single word. 4. Ryder turned. "What?" The man didn't answer, but someone else did. "4 this week," said a voice behind them, old, dry, familiar. It was the old man from the library. "They're not missing," he said. "They're gone." The fog eats what it wants, and the rest of us try not to look too long. Ryder stepped forward. What is it? Why does it kill like this? The old man just smiled. You already know. That night, Elani didn't sleep. She sat by the window in total silence, eyes locked on the growing fog outside. Her face had gone pale, hollow. Ryder finally broke the silence. You knew her, didn't you? He asked. The woman from the other night. Elani nodded. She was my godmother, one of the few people who believed me after my mom disappeared. She's dead? No. Elani shook her head slowly. She's part of it now. Ryder sat up straighter. What do you mean? I mean, I saw her eyes. Her voice cracked. They weren't hers anymore. They were orange, burning, like the thing in the fog. She smiled at me, and I swear, it was happy to see me. A long pause. Then, almost breathless, she whispered, I think it knows who I am. The next day, fog oozed through the cracks of Silent Glen like blood through gauze. They followed it, north, toward the outskirts of town. That's where they found it. A stone circle buried beneath dead leaves, blackened, broken, covered in symbols, some familiar, some indecipherable. In the center sat a stone altar, stained with something long dried and dark. Ryder crouched, brushing away moss. Words were carved into the base in old script. To bind what cannot be killed, blood must be given, willing or not. Elani knelt beside him, her hand hovered above the stone, trembling. I've been here before, she whispered. Ryder looked at her. I was a child. They brought me here during a storm. I thought it was a dream, but... She swallowed. They said our bloodline was meant to protect the town, meant to feed it. She looked up at Ryder, eyes wide. I think I'm the reason it's still alive. They weren't supposed to find the cellar, but the forest gave it away. After they'd uncovered the stone altar, Ryder and Elani followed the faint imprint of what might have once been a path, barely visible beneath the rot. The trees leaned in like eavesdroppers, branches cracking softly with each step. The fog crept behind them, always behind. Eventually, they reached a small hill blanketed in moss and nearly swallowed by the woods. At its base, an old wooden hatch, locked with rusted chains. Elani stood over it, eyes narrowing. I remember this, she murmured. Ryder glanced at her. You were here. She nodded, then knelt and ran her fingers along the edge of the hatch. My mother brought me here once. She said if I ever came back, I'd be forced to remember what our family had done. Ryder broke the chains with a piece of rebar found nearby. The hatch creaked open like it hadn't been touched in decades. The cold that spilled out wasn't air. It was memory. The cellar walls were lined with stone, carved with strange markings and rows of dates, each etched beside a single name. At the far end stood a crumbling altar made of darkened bones, melted wax, and old cloth, soaked in ash. Above it, scrawled across the rock wall in something black and shiny. We fed the fog. Ryder stared in silent horror. Elani stepped closer, lifting a torn page from the altar. It was a ritual, a pact. Her hands shook as she read aloud. Let the mist take what it must, one of ours to protect the rest. Should no blood be given, the fog will rise and take what it pleases. She dropped the page like it burned. My mother, she wasn't the first, Elani whispered. My family made a deal with it. Every generation someone was offered, sacrificed, so the rest of the town could live. Her voice cracked. I was supposed to be next. That night, they stayed in an abandoned house on the edge of town, one of the many left behind during the early evaporation years. Neither of them spoke much. Ryder paced while Elani sat in silence, her reflection flickering in the cracked mirror above the fireplace. "I think that's why it keeps coming for us," she said finally. "I broke the chain. I left the town when I turned 16. The pact wasn't fulfilled." Ryder sat across from her, jaw tight. "So it's taking others instead." Elani nodded. "And it won't stop until it gets what it was promised." The silence between them swelled. Then came the knock. 3 soft taps at the door. Ryder grabbed the fireplace poker. Elani stepped back. They didn't open it. They didn't need to, because when Ryder peeked through the curtain, there was no one outside, only fog, and just behind it, a silhouette, massive, crouched low, smiling with a mouth full of jagged light. The fog wasn't rolling anymore. It was boiling. It oozed down the street like molten smoke, dense and suffocating. By the time Ryder and Elani made it to the abandoned church on the hill, visibility had dropped to a foot, maybe less. The bell tower loomed above, half swallowed by mist. The building creaked with the weight of memory and rot. "We shouldn't have come here," Elani whispered. Ryder looked at her. "We had to. We need answers." She stared at the stained glass windows. This place was where the pact was made, not the altar. That was just for show. The real deal happened here, in the dark. Thunder cracked somewhere far off, but the fog didn't shake. It just moved closer. Inside, the church was cold, too cold, as if heat couldn't exist there anymore. Pews were overturned. The pulpit had rotted down the middle. Black ash outlined strange, sprawling symbols along the floorboards, worn with age, almost erased, like someone had tried to scrub the pact out of memory. But the fog had remembered, and it had followed them in. The doors slammed shut behind them. "Ryder?" Elani's voice was distant. He turned, and she was gone. He spun in place, breath freezing in his throat. The fog had swallowed the room, wall to wall. His flashlight barely cut through. He shouted her name. No response. Then, giggling, not hers. "It's." Elani ran through the back halls of the church, deeper and deeper into the darkness. She could feel the fog thickening around her ankles, her chest tightening as if invisible hands were pressing into her lungs. Something brushed her shoulder. She turned and saw her mother. Or a memory of her, standing barefoot in the mist, skin shimmering like glass, smiling. "Elani," she whispered, "don't run." Elani stumbled backward, heart hammering. "You left us," the figure said. "You were meant to stay." "I didn't know." "You did." The fog behind the woman writhed. Something enormous shifted within it. 10 horns rising like branches, eyes glowing deep orange, mouth grinning too wide for any face. Her mother's face began to melt, slowly, painlessly, into mist, and the thing behind her stepped forward. Elsewhere, Ryder kicked through pews, calling for Elani. Suddenly, a hand gripped his shoulder. He turned and came face to face with himself. Not a reflection, a duplicate. Same face, same eyes. But its smile was wider, unnatural, its teeth sharp. Fog leaked from its mouth as it whispered, "She'll die first, and then it'll be your turn." Ryder lunged, but the doppelganger vanished into mist, laughing. Elani hit the sanctuary doors just as Ryder did, both gasping, both shaking. "I saw," she began. "I know," Ryder said, "so did I." They turned to the front doors. The fog was waiting. Just beyond the glass, a shape towered. It had grown. Its horns now twisted across the ceiling, dragging through the air like smoke trails. Claws scraped the floorboards. It wasn't outside anymore. It was inside. And it was closing in. The church doors groaned as they slammed shut behind them. Ryder and Elani collapsed against the splintered pews, lungs burning from running, from fear. The fog was still inside, not swirling now, just waiting, pressed against the walls like breath held too long. Ryder turned to her. "What the hell was that?" Elani didn't answer. She stood up slowly, walked to the center of the sanctuary, and stared down at the blackened symbols burned into the wood. "I remember this place," she said, "but not as it is now, as it was before." Her voice sounded different, not frightened anymore, just hollow. "When I was 7, my mother brought me here during a fog storm," she began. "She made me kneel, right here, said I was chosen." She closed her eyes. She cut her palm and mine and let the blood drip into the floor. Ryder stared at her. "You said she vanished." "She did. She gave herself to it, so I wouldn't have to." Elani looked back at him, eyes glossy. "But I think she was wrong. I think it was never about sacrifice. I think it was about creation." "What are you talking about?" "I don't think the fog monster was always there," she whispered. "I think we made it, fed it, believed in it so much that it became real." Ryder swallowed hard. "And I think I'm the last one keeping it alive." The fog crept forward like a tide. Elani didn't move. It curled around her ankles, but her skin didn't sizzle like the others. It wrapped around her like silk, familiar, loving. "Elani," Ryder whispered, "get back." "I think it's waiting for me to choose," she said, "to become like the others, like my mother." He took a step toward her, but the fog flared between them, hot, burning. He gasped and stumbled back. Elani looked into the heart of the mist, and it moved. The shape was clearer now. 10 horns, enormous claws, embers where eyes should be. It knelt before her like a beast before its queen. She turned to Ryder, voice shaking. "I can make it stop. I think if I go with it, it ends." "No," Ryder growled. "That's what it wants. To isolate you, to feed." She looked down. Maybe, or maybe I was always meant to be part of it. The fog pulsed around them. The pressure built, wood creaking, glass trembling. The thing opened its mouth. 1,000 tiny whispers came pouring out. Voices, names, screams, memories, all the lost. Elani stepped forward. Ryder screamed her name. But she didn't vanish. She walked into the fog. And it embraced her. The next morning the fog lifted. Silent Glen felt empty. No screams, no footprints, no Elani. Ryder walked to the edge of town, watching the woods sway gently in the breeze. Then a whisper in the wind. His name. Behind him, fog curled under a nearby car door. Just a tendril. Small. Hungry. Watching. 3 days passed. The fog never came back. Not fully. A whisper here, a curl beneath a door, a mist rising from the floorboards before vanishing like it had second thoughts. But everyone in Silent Glen knew. It wasn't gone. It was just resting. Ryder stayed. He told himself it was to finish the story, to uncover the truth, to find some proof that Elani was still alive. But deep down, he knew. He wasn't a reporter anymore. He was a witness. And witnesses don't get to leave. Each night, he walked the edge of the woods where he last saw her disappear. He'd whisper her name into the trees. The fog would sometimes answer, low, curling at his feet, brushing his skin like a familiar touch. No burn, no pain. Just pressure. Like a hand. And sometimes, when the wind picked up and the clouds drifted low, he could swear he saw her face in the distance, watching him. Not smiling, but not angry either, just still. On the 7th night, a letter arrived at the motel desk. No name, no return address, just one line. The pact is no longer broken, but the fog must feed. Ryder dropped it. The paper was damp and warm. That night, as the rain began to fall and thunder rumbled in the hills, the fog returned. Not with violence, not with fury, just intention. It moved down the streets like it knew the way home, and outside Ryder's window it stood. Tall, horned, eyes glowing. But it didn't try to get in. It didn't knock. It just stood there, staring. Waiting. Ryder closed his eyes and whispers, Elani. When he opened them, the fog is inside. No one ever found Ryder's body. Only mist on the motel floor. And a whisper caught on the old tape recorder beside his bed. She made her choice. Now I make mine.